Stop hoping for your business to grow and start mastering the formula for success that every entrepreneur needs to grow their business. Join us for 5+1 Mastery, where every week we go in depth on how to grow your business the right way. Learn more at 5+1mastery.com.
That's the best advice I'd give you. Shake it off, step up, adapt. Like the things that were meant to bury you are the things that set you free. It helps you think of new strategies, new ideas. You get better, you improve.
I'm your host, Chaz Wilson. I bring you successful entrepreneurs, add valuable wisdom to your journey, and help you succeed. Welcome to Connect, Share, and Prosper.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Connect, Share, Prosper. My name's Chaz Wilson, your host, and I want to introduce my guest today. Let me just, before I go too far here, I want to read a quick introduction about my guest, Justin Prince. He's a family man, entrepreneur, health and fitness enthusiast who has displayed an insatiable drive to succeed throughout every chapter of his life. He went from selling out of a mall kiosk with no college education to building 4 different multi-million-dollar businesses that have generated over $1 billion in revenue. He shared his passion and success story in over 20 countries around the world and inspires over 1 million people a day from his social media platforms, and I'm one of those, so thank you, Justin. Justin's passion is to provide people the strategies, motivation, and skills they need to intentionally ignite the greatness that lies within them and go from the person they are to the person they are born to become. Please help me welcome Justin Prince. Justin, welcome to the show.
Chaz, honored to be on, brother. I appreciate you having me. I feel kind of the same way about you. I just admire the great work that you do, the value that you add to so many people. So it's great to be on with you.
Thank you. So I have to tell you, this is just so heartfelt and the honest truth. I have wanted to have you, and I was sharing a little bit before we started, but I've wanted to have you as a guest on the show for a while. We get booked out quite a bit of ways, and I was like, I really want to have Justin. And I'll tell you just quickly why, for my audience that knows me really well and knows kind of my backstory. We could probably spend an entire episode. You and I have actually a lot in common. And I only know that from watching things that I see that you do. And I'm like, and I think that's why I have a connection, even though we don't know each other very well, just a little bit through introduction. But we have a lot in common. And so I'm excited today because I feel like I'm going to have, and this might just be the episode just for me. Like everyone listening might go, wow, this feels a little weird that I'm involved in this conversation. But I truly admire what you've done and what you're doing, I should say. So I want to jump in a little bit about this. I want to hear your backstory because I know today, I think sometimes people see a success story, right? And they think, well, gosh, there's no way Justin could relate to me. I mean, look at what you've built, look at what you're doing and stuff. So take us back to that day, sort of that entrepreneurial journey. Where did you get your start and kind of how things evolved?
First of all, I agree with that. I think we sometimes get a bias because we see the end of the story, and so we think that they don't know what I'm going through, and I may not be able to relate to everyone's the ins and outs of the journey, but I can relate to a lot of it. But I'm from Utah, from Salt Lake City, Utah. My wife and I have 4 kids from 16 down to 8, 2 boys, 2 girls, and I grew up in a home. My folks were divorced when I was 12. Grew up in kind of a middle America home. Folks got divorced when I was 12. We moved 13 times in the next 7 years, kind of through those teenage years. And I was raised by single parents, lived primarily with my mom, visit my dad's on the weekend. And, my dad was a home builder and a land developer. And so I kind of always had this entrepreneurial bug, like one day, I want to be somebody. But I had a semester and a half of college. My first I used to work on my dad's construction sites, just doing what I called the go for work, go for this, go for that, go for this, go for that. It wasn't like learning to swing a hammer. And then I worked in a mall kiosk when I was 21. I sold animated Bible movies, and I tease people, the mall is this place, because a lot of your audience is younger. A mall is this place that all of us older people would go, and the Amazon was a river. We'd hang out at the mall,
Right.
And I was the dude at the mall that tried to sell you cartoon Bible movies,
That everyone walks by and no one wants to make eye contact with.
Right. You're like, don't look at him, dude. Yeah. And so good news with that is it taught me. I went from being you hear about climbing the corporate ladder. That's a term that we've heard before. Yeah. To me, there's an entrepreneurial ladder. And yes. the bottom rung is $1 per hour. You're trading time for money. The next rung up is a commission. It's like an all commission. And so for me, I started I went from being like, I hate this, I can't make any money. Because if you don't sell, you don't make money, you go hungry. But if you sell a lot, then you make a lot, make more than all your friends. And so started to learn the skill of direct to consumer sales and how to work with people. And then I was introduced to becoming an entrepreneur when I was 25 years old. Kind of the short story is this: I actually built a success in this. In fact, at one point, my wife and I were on 2,000 newsstands all over the United States in the Barnes and Noble like entrepreneur section. I'm 26 years old. I'm like, I'm the man. The company, the business that I'd started, it went out of business literally overnight. Like the owner got in a fight with our management team, just ripped this little business apart.
Oh.
When that happened, I had like grown man tears crying down my face. Like, I'm not the man anymore. Like I had to start over. What people didn't know when they saw that journey is that I had burned through all my savings. In other words, like, it's like, you're making this much money, your goal is to make this much. And right as I was kind of doing this whole thing and I become full-time and I was like, all things are working out, boom, the business failed. And so,
oh my goodness,
I was below zero financially. I was back on taxes, back on credit cards, out of savings. At one point we moved my pregnant wife and our two little babies into the loft of my wife's parents' garage. I'm 27 years old. I'm a grown man. I live in the United States of America. I'm married with kids and I'm living in the loft of my wife's parents' garage with two kids sleeping in the closet. I'm laying on the bed. I remember many nights I'm working two part-time jobs. I'd work all day in the one job, all night on the other job. And then I would try and build a new business kind of like just kind of as I went. And then obviously trying to raise a family and the whole thing. And I remember laying in bed many nights. It's like 1 a.m. and I'd be like, it's pitch black. And I'd be like, are you awake? My wife's like, yeah. She's like, are you awake? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, honey, am I crazy? Like, am I chasing like a fake dream? Like, I know it's possible for other people, but is it ever going to be possible for us? Like, what am I doing here? Because there was a part of me that just thought, just go get a good job, dude. What's wrong with you? Like, go stop the, like, just being like this big dreamer and like, one day I'm going to be successful. Well,
stop dreaming, right?
What's that?
Stop dreaming. That's what I mean. That's the voice. By the way, I didn't mean to cut you off here, but I wanted to just make a big point because I think there's people listening who are in this spot right now. And it may not be exactly, living in the loft kind of thing, but it might feel like the same thing. And I think these are the conversations that often many of us go through. Many people who are listening have heard my story about having 5 children, just had twins. I have $27 in my bank account. My wife's at the grocery store going, the card doesn't work. And I'm like, that's not even enough to get diapers for the 3 that are in diapers right now. So I think there's a lot of people that relate to this. So you're literally having the conversation out loud that a lot of us have in our heads about where are we at. So where did you go from here? How did you move past it?
Well, it's interesting. There's an old story that of an old mule, and the mule accidentally falls into an old well, and like a dried up well. And the farmer comes, and the old mule is down there like, man, I'm gonna die down here. Like, I can't get out, And the farmer comes and he looks up and he sees the farmer. He's like, oh my gosh, yes, phew, he's gonna pull me out. Well, it's an old mule. It's an old dried up well. The farmer's like, man, I'm just gonna bury it. Like, I can't pull it out. It's not worth it. So the farmer grabs a shovel, boom, throws dirt and rocks and all the pressure and all the stress. By the way, any of you that are going through that, you know what I'm talking about, where when you swallow, you can feel the pressure. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, when you breathe, you're like, oh, dude, like that financial pressure in your throat and in your chest. So then more dirt, more rocks, more dirt, more rocks. And the mule says, I'm going to die down here. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it hits him that this crisis that he's going through is actually his opportunity. And he realizes that the things that were meant to bury him are the things that set him free. So what he does is he shakes it off and he steps up, and then he gets more dirt, more rocks, and he shakes it off and he steps up. And that's, I feel like, what I did. Like, I just continued to shake it off and step up. There's 2 great questions that a leader needs to ask. Question number 1 is, how far do I fall when negativity hits? Like when crisis or challenge or pain or hurt or disappointment or a business failure or whatever it might be for you, how far are you going to fall? Question number 2, how long are you going to stay down?
Yeah.
And there, you might say, it's my circumstances. So in other words, like, this is what happened. So I fell this far because this is what happened. Even if that's true, you got to choose how long you stay down. Like, is it you stay down for like 90 seconds, 9 days, 9 months, 9 years, 9 decades? Like, how long are you going to stay down and just like bleed? Like, I'm going to get up and go, like, dust myself off and go again. And that's the best advice I'd give you. Shake it off, step up. adapt, like the things that were meant to bear you are the things that set you free. It helps you think of new strategies, new ideas. You get better, you improve. You don't keep doing the same. Maybe like, for example, we're going through this kind of crazy pandemic, for the most crazy pandemic of the last 100 years, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, regardless of what your take is on it, we're all still living it, right? We're all still, this is our reality.
Yep.
And this is a time where you can say, what new skills do I need to learn? Like, what are the things, like maybe the thing that was meant to bear you, maybe this crisis that was meant to bear you is actually the thing that sets you free. Maybe this is where you do shake it off. You shake off some of those old skills, you learn some new ones, you step up a little bit and you go to the next level. So to me, that's kind of what I felt like happened. That would be the one thing. The second thing I'd share with you guys is this. There's a word that can guarantee your success. And I know that's a huge statement. Like, one word can guarantee your entire success. And there's a word that can do it. And guarantee is a big word, right? So what's the word that can guarantee your success? The answer is the word until. There's this famous Og Mandino scroll where he said, I will persist until I succeed. Yeah. And what I would share with you is this, my friend, just burn it into your soul. Like the word until, like most people persist until it gets hard. They persist until the crisis. They persist until they don't know what else to do. They persist until the big account cancels. They persist until the business fails. They persist until something happens. Then they're like, I'm out. I was just like, I'm going to persist until I succeed. I remember I was keynoting, speaking for a wealth management firm out in Seattle. The average income of the room, the average was $750,000 a year in income. So there's a bunch of folks making a few $1 million a year. I was probably one of the youngest guys in the room, by the way. I'm at the time probably in my, I was probably 37, something like that. So there's some folks in there that are in their 40s, 50s, 60s. They've been in this wealth management game for a long time. And I taught this principle that, the word until can guarantee your success. I'll persist until I succeed. And I saw this gentleman in the back. He kind of had his hand like this, and he's probably 65 years old is my guess. I don't know how old he was for sure, but kind of had his glasses up a little bit. And I could see him kind of like wanting to almost raise his hand and ask a question, but didn't also want to interrupt me in the middle of a keynote. But I could, so instead of just ignoring him or not looking at him, I said, sir, do you have a question? Like middle of the thing.
Yeah.
He says, yes, I do. I said, what's your question? And he said, well, he's like this. He's like, you're telling everyone that the word until, I'll persist until I succeed, will guarantee their success. He said, isn't the definition of insanity like doing the same thing over and over? Like, in other words, like I'll just keep working so hard and just keep working and finally it will work.
Good question.
Yeah. And I go, okay, that's fair. And I said, there's a word that you need to write in your notes. And I said, the word is adapt. Yeah. Like, you don't just keep banging against the wall if it's not working. Like right now in COVID, like you need to adapt, but the word until still guarantees your success, meaning I will adapt until I succeed. Like, you just keep pivoting. Like, I look at our current business we launched 6.5 years ago. We've very kind of quietly generated over 4 million customers, over 1.7 billion in sales. We built a really kind of a cool business. And we adapted so many times in those early years, just pivot, until we succeeded. You know what I'm saying? And so the word until can guarantee your success. So shake it off, step up. The things that were meant to bear you are actually your things that will set you free. That's your opportunity. And then secondly is just, man, adapt and persist and do it until you succeed.
Man, it's so powerful. So, I mean, I'm just kind of recap, and then I want to ask you a question about this. So you're at this stage where, it feels heavy, just like that mule. Like, it feels heavy, all of that stuff. Like you said, you talked about when you're, it's heavy to swallow. I remember, like, as you're saying this, I actually feel that. I think people who go through that still have those like tangible, tactile feelings. Like, and when you're talking about it, and I'm thinking to myself, I remember that stage of being more surprised when my card went through than when it didn't. Like, I'm at the store, I'm like, approved? All right, good, let's go with it. It's like those hard times. But here you move forward, and I loved these questions, and we'll make sure we put these in the notes, you guys, to remember these questions. I'm here with Justin Prince, my guest today on Connect, Share, Prosper. So the current business that you're in, you talked about how you said about 6.5 years ago you started this business. Tell us a little bit about it. Tell us, when you said we, so I assume you have partners. How did this thing come about that you've moved into this new phase that has brought you such success?
Yeah, it was interesting. About 10 years ago, I sold my last business. I got out of that profession in general. This actually is interesting about this idea about adapting and adapting and adapting, and like the struggle is actually the opportunity. I went back. So I was in private equity consulting for 2 years. I went back to that former profession. And but I identified problems or challenges. Remember, opportunity is found, like find a problem and solve it, find a need and fill it. So like even in your business right now, or even in your industry right now, or even in your kind of orbit, like what problems could you solve? Like where could you add value? Like what needs could you fill? That's the business right there. That's how business, that's like the foundation. So for us in that space, the space didn't have enough actual customers. It was in the direct sales space where most of the consumption of the products were coming from people that were associates or distributors of that company's products. So our whole thing was like, what if we could like play on the power of what's happening in e-commerce and build millions and millions and millions of consumers? Then we would build a great opportunity for, online entrepreneurs, people that wanted to, make a business online. And so when we solved that problem, it really disrupted our industry. We kind of just changed the way that people look at our industry. And so that was 8 years ago. We partnered with a $2.3 billion equity fund. We took over an existing 25-year-old company. Basically, think of this, guys. It's a 25-year-old company. It's a couple $100 million a year in revenue, and it does business in over 20 countries around the world. We ripped it down to the floorboard and rebuilt it. So it's like changing the engine of a 737 while it's flying at 30,000 feet. Yeah. And just rebuilt everything. Like anything you could change, we changed. We rebuilt this whole business, an entirely new ownership, executive management team, new way that we compensated people, new product line, new name, new branding, new product pricing, new products. Just imagine your consumers are like getting your product one day, and then the next day it's like a new thing, and they're like, "What's going on?" It was the risk level was just off the charts, but that was the opportunity. Was that it created a moat. In medieval times, they'll have these moats around the castle. Yeah. It created a moat because it was so hard what we tried to do.
Yeah, I was just going to say, would it have been easier in some ways to have just started from scratch than to? Sure, you had culture and different things that was already established, and processes that people were used to, and things that you probably had to just start over.
Yeah, the hardest thing to do in business is a turnaround. That's the hardest. Second hardest is a startup, and we did both at the same time. The thing that was so interesting is that our foreign markets actually were what funded the operation. So it's almost it's all part of what the moat was. Is that a startup couldn't have done what we did. They couldn't have had the broad product line that we had. They just wouldn't have had some of the resources that we had. But then also an existing company couldn't have taken the risk that we took, because they wouldn't be able to risk that much revenue. And so it was just this really unique time. But we went out, and it's now, this year, just to give you some context, we've grown every year for 6 years. And I know a lot of folks are hurting, so I don't share this. Like, this is not to sound like I'm boasting or bragging. I meant to more like it's a reporting of what's happening. Like March of this year was the biggest month of 2020. April was our biggest month ever. May was bigger than April. June was bigger than May. July was the biggest July we've ever had in company history. August was bigger than July. September was bigger than August. September 3rd is our biggest sales day, single sales day ever. So so through this really challenging time, our business has really spiked, and we were positioned ahead of a lot of those trends, to where when people needed to make money online, or people needed to have healthier products, whatever, they actually positioned right to where we already were. And a lot of that work, again, my friends, a lot of that work was laid 8 years ago, 7 years ago, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, when we just kept pivoting and pivoting and pivoting until persisting until you succeed and you create what you're trying to create. So it's been an amazing ride. I feel like we're just getting that party started, but it all kind of comes back to those original principles.
So here's what's interesting. I'm going to just kind of put some context to this. First of all, I think it's motivating, and congratulations for having the year that you're having. I don't think people should shy from that, but I understand what you're saying in the context of like so many people are hurting right now. But there's a couple of key points. One is that I think what it shows too is what's different now than in many economic downturns is that people are spending money right now. Often when economic downturns comes, it affects like across the board, right? Real estate markets crash and things. That's not what we're going through right now. there are people in or certain industries, and there's a lot of people making money. But what's interesting is you said 8 years ago, so roughly 2011, 2012, you were so that's when we started as well. So we kind of came out of that, the 2009, 2010, 2011, when it was real tough in the economy, and we came out of that, and you guys came out of that kind of that same time. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, man, it is like feels so heavy, some of these great companies and brands are born out of this. What's also fascinating is I actually was introduced to you about probably feels like 2013 or 2014. Some folks in Minnesota who I think are part of your organization had put us somewhere on a conference call, but I was like head down building this.
Yeah.
You were building yours, and I'm like, here we are circled back 5 years later or whatever it is. Yeah. So I love that. Let me ask you this question as it kind of tie this in. And again, guys, I'm with Justin Prince. If you want to learn more about Justin, he has a great book, Change Your World. And you can get it at IamJustinPrince.com. We'll make sure we include that in the notes and everything. IamJustinPrince.com. Get his book, Change Your World. It will change yours. We believe that everything of significance in our lives comes through relationships. That's one of our mottos that we teach, that relationships are the basis of all great things. Who have been really fundamental relationships for you, whether it be supportive or mentoring? Sort of who's been your network that has supported you through this and you've looked up to and helped you through this?
As far as like a supporting one is, I mean, it's for sure been like my wife. I mean, this girl, yeah. I mean, I don't know if a lot of women would have wanted to come on that journey. It was it was just, that was a lot of grind, and she never, I mean, even when I doubted myself, she didn't doubt me. She's just like, you got this, like, you're gonna be fine, and we're gonna work through it. And she was just willing to just go through those early lean years. Yeah. So I couldn't have done it without her. She was and she is really unbelievable. From a mentoring perspective, one thing that's interesting about mentors, I'll share maybe three quick things. One is you'll have mentors like through periods of your life, through seasons of your life. So it's like you had one when you were 18 that really impacted you, and you had another one at 22 that really added value, and then you had another one at 27 or whatever. So there's seasons, and so it's hard. Like now, I don't necessarily refer to that one at 18, but I wouldn't have gotten where I got without that person at 18.
I get it.
But I've done a lot of work with like John C. Maxwell. Some of you guys are familiar with him. He's the world's foremost authority on leadership. Served on his advisory council, done some country transformations with him, done some really neat things, really, really impactful, neat things with John. I remember one time we were at the U.S. Embassy in Costa Rica, and I'm sitting there. It's like John Maxwell, the U.S. ambassador, and me, and I'm like, what in the heck is happening here? And so I've learned a lot, from people like John, but I've had other business ones. So that's the second thing. The third thing I'd share with you is this. You can really get mentored by podcasts like this. You can get mentored by great books. So like Chaz, you can mentor someone that can like call you their mentor. And they've never even met you in their whole life.
So true.
But they've gotten into your head from listening to your perspectives and even the questions you ask and the people that you surround yourself with. And I'll give you an example. I was building our business. We were doing, we'd done at that point probably $1 billion in revenue. So I mean, on one hand, you're like, oh my gosh, you're crushing it, dude. I read Elon Musk's, Jeff Bezos, and Richard Branson's latest books. And here I am, like trying to build this business, and these guys are trying to colonize space and like colonize Mars. And I'm like, geez, dude. Like I was like, I got to step up my game, And the point that I'm making is, I was mentored by them from afar. I thought bigger when I was done with their books. Like it helped me to be like, I gotta really go to the next level. And all of that happened from just reading their books and just being around their information. So you can get mentored from books and podcasts, and you want to have a hunger to get around other people's good thinking. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like other people's like thought processes, and you're like, okay. And so that's the one. 2 is seek out good mentors, like, with John Maxwell and someone that I had. And then 3 is you'll have them in seasons. You'll have different mentors in different seasons. And your financial mentor may not be your physical fitness mentor, and your physical fitness mentor may not be your spiritual mentor. So you find people, or the one that coaches you up on your marriage. But maybe the one that coaches you up in your marriage is not your financial one, but he's a good marriage one, and he's not your spiritual one. He's different than your physical fitness one. Like I try and get around people that are way ahead of me in physical fitness, way ahead of me in marriage, way ahead of me in business, way ahead of me in relationships, how to treat people, way ahead of me in investing. And so I have different mentors in different categories of my life. I don't try and use one person for all the categories typically.
By the way, I second that. I agree wholeheartedly with what you just said. And there's seasons and different mentors for different reasons and different things. And truthfully, that's where, to give you credit, that's where why I was excited to have you. One of the reasons why I was excited to have you on the podcast is I see what you're doing. I think from a business standpoint, you're further down the road than where we are right now, where we want to be. But one of the things that I admire, and I'll give you credit here on this podcast for that I admire, as a husband and father of 5, what I admire, and I feel like it's harder to find more people like this who don't feel like you have to sacrifice all of those personal things to have a successful business life as well. And so for me, I tend to gravitate towards people that I share that similar value. So I commend you for doing that. And you've been very public about that in many ways including, videos with your kids or your family or different things you're doing. And so I commend you for doing that.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, I believe that no success that we have outside our homes can compensate for failure inside our homes.
Right.
And if you had like a priority list, and by the way, I would encourage you guys to do this. Like what is important? What are your priorities? Like most people don't lack time, they lack priorities. And my priority list, like number 1 would be my family, my relationship with my wife, my relationship with my kids, like what happens with my family. Number 2 is and I'm an ambitious dude. Like in other words, I'm like grinding, trying to make it happen. But my business ambitions or my life ambitions are way below my family ones. So that's my family one is number 1 by quite a ways. And so if that's out of balance, if that's out of whack,
yes,
then I need to like slow down on some of the other stuff and make sure that I get that, kind of tuned in.
So good. Guys, go to IamJustinPrince.com, order his book, Change Your World. Justin, time flew for me here. This was very positive. I got a lot of notes here. Is there any final thoughts you want to share with, again, just somebody listening to this? Again, we have a lot of young people that listen to this. I come to find out, I'm talking to one of my kids, and they're telling me, oh, yeah, all the kids at my high school listen to your podcast. I'm like, oh, had no idea. So we've got young high school getting ready to start maybe in a couple years this career path. To those, we've got a lot of single parents that listen to this podcast. A lot of people who are running their business right now and just trying to push through that grind. You've already given a ton, so I'm kind of putting you more on the spot here. But any final thoughts you'd want to give people that maybe just feel like that hope isn't there right now?
Yeah, I mean, look, a couple quick thoughts. First thing is this: do everything you can to rid yourself of entitlement. Like everything you can to rid yourself from someone owes me something. Everything you can to rid yourself of pity or that like you feel bad for yourself. Just do everything you can just to rid it out of your system, where you're like, you know what? Half the world is on $2.50 a day. Like I am blessed and highly favored. The fact that they're listening to your podcast on an internet connected mobile device, most likely means right. They are like way ahead of the world. Right. So no one owes you anything. You're in complete control of your responses. Like don't react, leaders don't react, they respond, make decisions, make commitments, go make things happen. Don't whine, don't blame, don't complain, don't make excuses. Like take full ownership of your life, live a life of intention. Most people live a life of reaction and distraction versus a life of intentional creation. Go create your life. Like take full ownership of your life, That'd be my first thing. Second thing is this: you're always do more than you're paid for as an investment in your future.
Oh, so good.
More than you're paid for as an investment in your future. Now think of those words. That's not sometimes do more or occasionally do more, or it would be nice if you could do more today. You always do more than you're paid for as an investment in your future. By the way, you don't do what you're paid for. You do more than you're paid for. Like add more value, serve at a higher level, like show up earlier, stay later, take the extra call, knock the extra door, like make the last sell, show up for the last appointment. Like always do more than you're paid for as an investment in your future, the person you're trying to become. The third quick thing I would share with you is this: the marketplace is actually your employer. So you're not employed by your company or a job, or you're employed by the marketplace. By the way, even if you own your own business, guess who pays the business? The marketplace. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, no, I own the business. I'm not employed by anybody. You're employed.
Yeah.
You're employed by the marketplace. And the marketplace will pay you what it thinks that you're worth. And so what you want to be focused on right now is building new skills, like finding ways to add more value, like add more value than anyone else in your market. Like, so you always do more than you're paid for as an investment in your future. And then you're constantly working on your skills. So I'll just give last thing just to kind of wrap it up. When I was making pizzas when I was in high school, I made $6.25 an hour. When I did construction for my dad's kind of construction gopher stuff, I think I was making either $7 or $8 an hour. When I sold the animated Bible movies, I'd have to do the math backwards, but I got to a point where I was, making over 6 figures a year. Then you get to a point where you're making, a couple 6 figures a year. And then you get to a point where you're making maybe $1 million a year. And you get to a point where you're making multiple $1 million a year. And then you get to a point where you're making multiple. What's the difference? The same amount of hours are the same.
Right.
What the difference is, you're more valuable to the hours. Your value that you brought to the hours increased. And that's what I would encourage you guys to be thinking about. Is like, what can I do to bring more value to the hours? What new skills can I learn? What new work ethic can I put in? How can I develop myself? So you're always doing more than you're paid for as an investment in your future. And you do that because you've rid yourself of all entitlement. No one owes you anything. You're not a victim. Even if tough times have happened, remember, tough times don't last, tough people do. It's the E plus R equals O formula. I'll leave you guys with this idea. It's event plus response equals outcome. So lesson number 1, E does not equal O. The events of your life don't equal the outcome of your life. The second thing is the R is not react, the R is respond. Great leaders don't react, great leaders respond. And then here's the other thing I want you guys to know. It's the ripple effect of your decisions. And here's what I want you to know. That your R, your response to the events of your life, is creating events for other people. So you want to say, what impact, what ripple effect, what event am I creating for other people? Is it a positive one or a negative one? When they're around me, around my business, around my thought process, I'm creating events for other people by my response to the events of my life. And so you just take full responsibility for your response. Full responsibility.
Have to, yeah.
So that's kind of some quick thoughts.
Man, it's so good. By the way, that's the book I'm writing right now is called Impact, Becoming a Person of Positive Influence. So I loved that little nugget there. I may reach out to you, get a little insight from you. Justin, man, such an honor to have you on the show today, and appreciate you guys being here. Guys, go to IamJustinPrince.com. Get his book, Change Your World. Remember, every Monday, noon Central, on the Master Network's Facebook page, I come to you live with successful entrepreneurs. And look, they're going to share the ups, the downs, they kind of reveal behind the scenes on their journey to success. And, we can learn from those just like we did from Justin today. So make sure you join me every Monday, noon Central, on the Connect, Share, Prosper podcast. Till then, everyone be well.
Stop hoping for your business to grow and start mastering the formula for success that every entrepreneur needs to grow their business. Join us for 5+1 Mastery, where every week we go in depth on how to grow your business the right way. Learn more at 5+1mastery.com.